Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurial Musician, a coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. This is TEM221 titled, It's Not Happening Overnight. Thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All right, TEM 221. It's not happening overnight. I think I just missed recording this without sound again. I think everything's all set up. Anyway, the Zoom settings were all messed up, and I launched in, then my spidey senses were like, you should check the mic again. It's all weird because I can't. Anyway, TEM 221. It's not happening overnight. Chris Martin, the principal trumpet of the New York Philharmonic, had a great quote during our Pedal Note Media Academy trumpet workshop, which we hosted a couple of weeks ago. And the quote was that he shared was from Barbara Butler, who is a world-renowned trumpet teacher down at Rice. She taught at Northwestern before that. She and her husband, Charlie Geyer, are both famous. They're a famous trumpet teaching tandem. And her quote that Chris shared with us was, "To be a poet on the trumpet, first you must be an athlete." First of all, that's an awesome quote about playing any instrument, but the reason I'm sharing it here is because I think there is a great parallel to the business side of music. To be a poet on any instrument, meaning able to really make an artistic impact, requires a lot of trial and error. Another great quote for you. This was from our Brass Junkies summer workshop. This is from Pat Sheridan. He said, if you can't develop a love of repetition, then you probably shouldn't become a professional musician, which I thought was great. That's what I think Barbara was referring to when she said you had to be an athlete. Lots of focused effort over a prolonged period of time. Now, flipping over to the business side of things, just so that you're not confused as to why you accidentally stumbled on an episode of the Brass Junkies without my co-host, I know a lot of musicians who try their hand at the portfolio career thing that I'm doing, and I bet that you're doing if you're listening to my voice right now, or they at least try their hand at some new aspect or aspects, new to them aspect of their portfolio career, and they have very little patience for developing the skills needed to excel in today's music business, or sometimes they just have very little patience for a couple of the skills in terms of developing them, and then they have more patience with others. If you aren't active, very active on social media, for example, you will not develop a meaningful presence there within a month. Even if you are great on one platform, you will not develop a presence on a different platform that people would miss if it disappeared. You're certainly not going to develop that within a month, right? You could be killing it on Twitter, and if you then launch an Instagram account, you're going to know a lot about social media. You might even be able to bring some of your followers over from Twitter, but within a month, you will not be able to build a presence that people value enough on Instagram that they would miss it if it disappeared. Another random example, if you've never done a Facebook Live event, you won't have a big audience the first time that you do one, or even the fourth time you do one, and you also won't have developed a voice in that medium right away either. There is essentially no way to build a real following on any social network quickly. And by real, by the way, I mean people who voluntarily sign up, follow you because they want to hear your message. I'm obviously not talking about buying followers, but I'm also not talking about people who follow you back because you followed them or any nonsense like that. Completely side note. It makes me sad. I've been on search committees before, and I'm not currently teaching college, but I've been on search committees at the collegiate level, and people will list the number of followers that they have on social media outlets. And by the way, if you were my TEM coaching client, I would actually tell you to do that because most committees will value that and they won't dig any deeper. And I'm always preaching about how you have to impress the people that you're trying to impress, and you impress them with the words and in the ways that they're going to be impressed by rather than educating them. But you could easily be a tuba teacher and have 5,000 followers on Twitter and end up having, for which, that's a lot for a random tuba player. And of those 5,000, there might be like 30 who are actually young tuba players who might come and study there. So they see that 5,000 number and think, oh, this person, she's going to be great at recruiting. And it's like, well, yes, that she may be, but it's not going to be because of the 30 people that follow her on Twitter who are actually of the age that they might go and study with her. So, anyway, any meaningful social media presence on any of the social media platforms takes time to develop. This is not a hot take, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious. The same goes for websites, which is your digital storefront, and you must have one. I've got must in my notes in all caps there. If you've never built a website, you won't make a great one within a month. You won't even be able to utilize the tools available through a website building service or platform. That obviously goes for coding your own site, but that also goes for utilizing the tools available on Wix or Weebly or any of them. Some are quite simple, but still are confusing as hell the first time that you open it up. And so you just don't even know what you don't know necessarily within a month. You won't get good at writing copy within a month. And when I say writing copy, which it was probably only like 5 years ago that I even knew what that phrase meant. In case you don't, writing copy means the words that you use to explain a product or service. So it's like the marketing words that you use. It's really important that you tell the customer how they are going to change. Tell them how you are going to make their problems go away. You don't tell them what you're actually going to do. And that is something that I have gotten a lot better at. And in fact, for Pedal Note Media, for all of our live events through Pedal Note Media Academy, I am the person who goes on to Thinkific, which is the platform where we have all of our events listed for sale, and there are events there for sale right now. That I am the person who comes up with the wording, or I'm the one who goes through and changes it. And I will tell you, after doing this a bunch, I've been studying it a long time, and I'm finally getting a lot of practice actually doing it, which is really exciting, actually. And you can see direct results of doing it well or not. I still just want to list what's going to happen. I just want to say we're going to have this guest who'll talk about this guest who'll talk about this guest who'll talk about this. Not that that's ineffective, but it is ineffective compared to being able to tell them how their trumpet playing for the trumpet workshop is going to change. That's something that you can't get good at within a month. You won't get great at grant writing within a month, right? You won't get good at figuring out which grants to apply for, how to apply for them, the details that they're looking. You won't get a voice as a grant writer within a month or 2 months. You won't get good at intentional networking within a month, and that doesn't mean just, for example, it's been at least 3 weeks since I've ranted about this. I think it's been longer, but I hesitate to say this because I do it all the time. But PR, I get them all the time, and I made a conscious decision. I do not answer emails from PR people who are just emailing me because they searched music business podcast or music entrepreneurship podcast, and that my name pops up. I don't know if it's for this podcast is the first page or the second page, whatever, but I get a lot of them. And when it's clear they have no idea what I actually do on TEM, then I intentionally do not answer them back. And so because they're just going to tell their client, well, I got emails back from X, Y, and Z. I don't even want to give them those numbers because they billed them hours and didn't even take the time to actually learn what the hell I do and give like a meaningful pitch. You're not going to get good at intentional networking. Remember the Vaynerchuk rule, which he doesn't Gary Vaynerchuk doesn't call it the Vaynerchuk rule. I do, but it's his 51-49 rule, which is that when the other person gets 51% of the value of being contacted, they're always going to be happy that you bothered them. I heard Seth Godin talking about appearing on other people's podcasts, things like that, before maybe last month. And if I were to ask Seth Godin to be on my podcast, here's the problem for Seth Godin is that I have, for my tiny corner of the world, I have I have a nice, it's big audience, and it's a very loyal audience. But compared to Seth Godin's audience, which is like hundreds of thousands of people who will listen to any episode of a podcast that he is on, he's going to bring his audience to my platform. What he is interested in is if I had a brand new audience that isn't familiar with him that I would bring to the table, and I would bring a couple. Well, you can't listen to this podcast and not know Seth Godin because all I do is quote him. But you understand what I'm saying, right? Seth Godin would not get 51% of the value of appearing as a guest on TEM. And I think that I could make it enjoyable for him, etc. But he gets hit up for, I can't fathom how many guest appearances he gets asked about on an annual basis. So that would not reach the 51-49 rule. If Seth asked me to appear, and he doesn't have guests on his podcast, but if he did and he asked me to appear, holy moly would I, not just because he's my hero, but that would open up my audience to, I mean, my presence would be something X starting the next week, unless I completely bombed. I guess it could also go the other way, but you understand what I'm saying. The list goes on and on and on of things that you're not going to get great or even good at within a month. And I chose the interval of a month randomly. You could say 2 months or 3 months, but I've heard many people say something to the effect of, and I mean like many like really smart musicians say something to the effect of, I was on Twitter for a couple of months and I got no benefit from it. Or I built a website, which, by the way, they did in like 2 days and they never kept tweaking it and it never gets any traffic. To be clear there, build your first website quickly. And then this is the important part. Keep paying attention to what's good about websites and what's bad about them, and then keep iterating yours over and over again until what it should look like becomes clear to you. We need to take Barbara Butler's advice and train ourselves over a prolonged period of time and then look for results, because no one in history has ever practiced the trumpet really hard for 2 months and then wondered why they don't sound like Chris Martin of the New York Philharmonic. Actually, people have done that, but I will cease to comment on that right now. And the other thing is this, to keep this in mind, is that you don't need to get great at everything. In fact, you shouldn't try, because it's impossible to get great at everything. We can just choose. If you don't have a website, it is vital that you have a website, which in my opinion means one of two things. It means that you need to figure out how to do it yourself, which has never been easier. And there are people who are not technologically savvy, or certainly not extraordinarily savvy, who end up making websites that are not just adequate, but that are great, like really great for their needs. Or you need to pay someone or partner with someone. There's ways to pay other than just sending them money via Venmo or PayPal. See, I'm just young enough that I do use Venmo. But anyway, I digress. So the point is that you have to have a website. So you either need to start that process of, like, because a month in, you're still not going to really know what you're doing, or you need to start allocating resources to have someone else solve the problem for you. And depending on your situation, one of those two is going to be better. Doing it yourself is not more admirable. It is not. If it's something you're interested in, and or if you have no resources and you do have the bandwidth to get it done, even if you don't want to do it right now, then great. But I don't think that it's any more noble to do your own website or to write your own copy. Social media is a little bit different, and these are just the examples I've been talking about in this episode, because the social media really has to be your voice. And so that's something that is, if you're going to outsource doing social media, you're going to need to find somebody who knows you extraordinarily well, and then somebody that keeps showing up over and over again and writes in your voice, and that is not cheap, like at all. That is not cheap. So that's kind of an outlier for these examples, but you need to decide if you have to have a website, well, then maybe that means that you put off a couple of other things until you get that digital storefront up. And then that's all about priorities. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that I saw the thousandth variation of this the other day where someone just simply said, I believe I retweeted this from the TEM coaching TEM Twitter handle, which was that you don't that you have to make time, right? You don't find time for things, you make time. And it's a cliche, but it's true, is that you're never going to just have the time to build a website unless you got a trust fund and you don't have a family. And I mean, that sounded great, and then it sounded sad. You understand what I'm saying? Maybe if you got a lot of free time and you don't need to be paying the bills necessarily, good for you. But for 99% of us, either talking into the mic or listening to me talk, that is not the case. You have to make the time. And we have to stick with it. We have to decide what's important, and then we have to stick with it, and then we have to run with it. So, all right. Thank you to everyone for listening, subscribing, leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get TEM, and simply for your attention, the most valuable commodity any of us have to give. TEM is produced by Will Houchin and is a part of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. The theme music for TEM is played by Ben Barron, Rich Kelly, Daniel Lapel, and Andrew Hitz. For show notes, the TEM blog, and to learn about TEM coaching, please visit our website, tem.fm. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you are watching on YouTube, I beg you to hit that subscribe button. And if you don't know that we have a YouTube channel, because that's still a pretty new thing, then head on over. And there's a link in the show notes as always. And a huge shout out to my Patreon patrons. You guys are amazing. You can find out more at patreon.com/TEM podcast, where you can learn about bonus content and lots of other stuff. I really appreciate all of you for supporting financially TEM and making more episodes possible. And that's going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician.